Hello, everyone. Just wanted, with a few words, to introduce this new class, The Wisdom of Love. So this class is a philosophy class. We're going to focus on some of the philosophical literature on love. And I designed this class because it's very rare that in college you have a class that actually applies to real life. So and we are truly in a crisis when it comes to relationships. We are in a world now where it's a very rare thing when you have a couple that is capable of sustaining a relationship, a quality relationship. I mean, divorce rates are through the roof, and those who are not divorced are suffering. So, Martin Buber talks about the crisis of our age as being a crisis. Of relationship. And I believe we are in this age where we are finding it increasingly difficult to sustain lasting relationships. And so I really believe that it's important that it's time that there is a class where we can gain the tools for not only, of course, initiating a relationship, but also sustaining it. Tools that will help us navigate also the difficulties in a relationship, the betrayals in a relationship. And this class is really there for this. So this is a class for those of us who are in complicated relationships and who nevertheless believe in our love and believe in our beloved and want the relationship um, to move in a direction of healing, of restoration. Again, this is not a class that is going to encourage us that is not going to prescribe to us to stay no matter what in a relationship. No, this is a class that if you choose, if you desire to stay, if you desire to, for your relationship to be restored, that will give you the tools to do so, so that you don't, so that you have options, right? When we are in a difficult situation, there's usually two options. One is just to suffer and die, and the other one is live and live. This class is going to help you, is going to open a middle path for those of us who want to stay in the relationship, who believe, who have a vision for that relationship, um, but who do not know how to stay in a way that is life-giving for them and for their partner. This class is there to offer this particular group of people the tools if they decide to stay in the relationship and to begin the healing of the relationship. So let me give you a little bit of a panoramic view of what we're going to study. We're going to start with a very ancient treatise found in the Hebrew Bible called the Song of Songs. And this treatise dates from around 1000 BC. It's one of the most ancient treatises on love and sexuality that we have in the history of the world. Much later, a little later, you have the Kama Sutra, you have later the Perfumed Garden. But this particular text is one of the most ancient ones written for the education of men and women when it comes to love and sexuality. So this will be a very interesting text to explore. It's actually a poem. But we shouldn't be fooled by the poetry that we see and the aesthetics of this text, because it was very typical in the ancient Near East that these kind of love poems were meant to contain wisdom. So this is a text of wisdom rather than just, a nice little ode to love. It's interesting that in the ancient Near East, usually these wisdom poems were written by women. And it's interesting that our main character in the book is a woman. So there is commentators sometimes argue that the Song of Songs was actually written by a woman, was actually a poem originally penned by a woman, which Solomon then kind of uh, rearranged and got put it in the main canon of the Hebrew scriptures, right? Or he didn't put it in the canon, but he, kind of rearranged it so that it would be publishable, I suppose, right? So very interesting text in which we will learn a lot of things. We're going to learn the art of seduction. We're going to learn how to navigate infidelity. And ultimately, we're going to learn about grace when it comes to love. So that's the first text we'll be studying. Then we will move on to Plato, who is a Greek philosopher. And this is also moving in time around 300 BC. And here we're going to study a text called the Symposium, which is a very poor translation. Actually, it's much better translated the banquet or the drinking party. And the setting of this text is truly a drinking party. You have a bunch of guys got together drinking, and then one of them has the brilliant idea to quickly stop drinking and organize a competition of whoever can compose and recite the most beautiful and insightful discourse on love. And so all the guests of the party immediately stop drinking, and one after the other they get up and they say what they have to say about love. And so you have these exquisite discourses, and you have one particular discourse um, which is spoken by Socrates, but which is quoting a woman called Diotima, and which brings us a very, very different perspective on love than what most of the men will have talked about. So in this particular text, we're going to study um, how to attract the soulmate. Of course, if there is indeed a soulmate, who knows, right? But if there is, just in case, it's very important to learn how to identify them so that we don't miss them. In this particular text, we're going to study how to recognize the soulmate so that the soulmate doesn't just walk by, so that we can then begin a relationship with someone who is meant to be for us. Okay. Then we will travel still in space and time. We will go into the medieval times around the 12th, 13th century, and we're going to study the love poems of Rumi, who is a Sufi poet. So he's in the Muslim tradition. And he's composing, of course, the poem is originally a composition about the love between humanity and God. It's beautifully written. It's just it's exquisite images and poetry. But we're going to read it in a much more horizontal manner in order to decipher what can we learn here about relationships in general between men and women. And what we're going to focus on, especially in Rumi, is the ability to overcome fear. Uh, for Rumi, love is really impossible if you are still hanging on to the ego. And so there is an element of destruction of the ego, an element of death that someone has to undergo before they can fearlessly love. What keeps us back very often under the disguise of fear is our ego and our pride. And so Rumi talks about a lot about the dissolution of the will or entering into one's death, so that we can then be rebirthed in a relationship. So extremely important advice nowadays, especially where love has become really about consumerism, right? The ego remains very strong and everything is centered on the ego. We are going into the decentering of the ego in order to experience true love. Our next author is going to be a German author. This is now in the 18th century, Immanuel Kant, with his very famous work, The Groundwork to the Metaphysics of Morals. And in this particular text, which is now going to be much more substantial, we're going to study about the importance of respect. It is not enough to love and to want to please our beloved. We also have to learn not only to respect them, but to respect ourselves. So Kant really talks about the importance of protecting the dignity of our beloved, but also of ourselves. Love is not just about pleasing the other or pleasing ourselves. There's a deeper dimension. Love is also about protecting the humanity of the partner and respecting them in their humanity. So we're going to learn here some very, very important lessons about not only respect of others, but self-respect. Then we will continue to travel north to Denmark. This is the 19th century with Soren Kierkegaard. Now, Kierkegaard was an existentialist philosopher. He was also a Christian. He is, in my view, you can consider him as the black sheep of his Christian community. He was really a rebel for most of his life, very critical of the kind of Christianity that was adopted in Denmark, which was really kind of like joining a big social club. He stumbles on authentic Christianity much later in his life. after a very, very deep heartbreak. So Kierkegaard is someone who really struggled with love. He struggled notably with commitment. He was afraid of committing because for him, how can I commit when I don't know who I will be 20 years from now? Maybe we will both be different. Why would we be together? Maybe it's not going to work. Why should I invest? So he really was a kind of a commitment phobe. And this played out in his one serious relationship with a woman called Regina, where they were engaged to be married, and he chickened out and lost her eventually. And he talks about her much later in his life, and he says he regrets, and he says, if I had had more faith, I would have married her. So this text that we're going to read is really his masterpiece. This is the work that has emerged out of this pain, out of this suffering, out of this heartbreak. And in this work, we see Kierkegaard rediscovering the Christian texts, scriptures on love, and realizing, wow, there's a treasure here. If I had only known this, I would have been able to marry Regina. So it's really a rediscovery of what it means to love, in a profound way, in a way that is able to navigate difficulties. And the most important idea we're going to study there is the concept of hope. Hope not as wishful thinking or a delusion, but hope as a force, as a transformation, as an agent, as a agent of transformation. In other words, there is in the practice of hope, because hope is not just a feeling for Kierkegaard, it's a work of love. As we practice hope for our beloved, we actually can bring transformation. Hope has an impact, not only on the relationship, but on our beloved and on ourselves. So we're going to look at the transforming power of hope in a relationship. Then we will go to Martin Buber in much darker times. We will be entering now the 20th century, right before, of course, the rise of Hitler. So there is already, the dark clouds are already gathering on Europe. Buber is in Austria at the time, and later in Germany. And Buber is going to sense how in his modern society, little by little, we are losing the sense of the sanctity of the human being. We are treating everything like a disposable object that we can use and discard. And so he's worried that we're losing the sense that humanity is a sacred dimension that we have to protect. And so in his work, I and Thou, he's going to talk about how do we reconnect with a human being in a way that protects their holiness, their humanity. And he's going to distinguish between the I-it relationship and the I-thou relationship. He's going to teach us how to stop using people and discarding people like objects, and how to learn again how to connect to people in a way that protects their sanctity and their humanity. Finally, we will finish with another woman, right? The Song of Songs is taught to us by a woman. We finish with a woman, Luce Irigaray, who is a French feminist. And I absolutely love her. She's going to introduce us finally to the ethics of sex. I love her because it's the first time it's the first female voice, or the second female voice in our course, and we're going to finally learn what women want in the bedroom. So this is a course for both men and women. Men will finally know what that woman desires, and we women will finally have words to put on our dissatisfaction. Very often, right? We make love and we feel something's missing, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if I should say it. I don't even know what I want. She's going to really give us the language to not only understand ourselves as women and connect to our embodied desires, but also express those desires. So a very important class, and a very nice way to end the class on a little more erotic note. So I hope you enjoy the class. I invite you to buy the books for the class, and so that you can follow as I go along. And I will put the names of the books in the description for the class, so that you can purchase the books ahead of time, so that you can follow seamlessly what is going on in the class. This is a class taught with students, so you will get to hear some of their comments and some of their observations. Yeah, it's a very interactive class. All right, I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you in future videos. Goodbye.